by Optionality, your community exploring the now of work. Happy Thursday, everybody. Jory Desjardins here. And Elisa Camahort Page is with me today. As always, every other week, we like to talk about the topics that we will be covering in our community discussions on our Substack and in our community. And this month, we are talking about back to school. And no, I'm not referring to the Rodney Dangerfield movie. I am referring to upskilling, up-leveling, deciding to do something. And it could be going back to a degree program. It could be going and getting an online certificate. It could be going to a LinkedIn Live event. Anything that you do to help up your game in this now of work. We call the future of work here the now of work, because as we all know and are probably feeling, AI is definitely having an influence on our jobs, on what we do, and on the pressure to upskill to meet the demands that AI hath wrought. So this is a big theme for the community, something we talk about pretty much every month, but we're really going to double down on the options that are in front of us around upskilling. So with that, Elisa, are you good with me covering what we're going to be talking about over the course of the month?
So I realize my video is not showing. I have no idea why. This is the same thing that happened with the webinar with Natalie. So go ahead. I'm here though.
Okay.
I'm here.
I thought it was just me, so I wanted to make doubly sure.
Well, the thing is, I can see myself. So last week we had a problem where we both were having problems with StreamYard, which is the tool we use. And so I ended up going on my mobile, which I may do again. It was much less convenient. And yeah, and then we did the webinar and my video didn't show up and I didn't know in real time because I could see myself just fine. And actually, I think Natalie could see me too. But now you said, I can't see you. Did you know that? And I'm like, no, I can see me. So I'm going to keep messing with this and yeah, carry on. And then if I have to, I'll get on my mobile phone, but I'm going to see if I can fix this.
All right, we're going to do our best here. So let's kick off with just what we have in store for the week, or for the month, I should say. We know a lot of people in our community who are experts on learning, on upskilling. In fact, one of our contributors, Gina Generu, has a company called Atheon that is focused on upskilling people for the future of work. And she comes at this with the perspective of someone who used to be a chief learning officer at a major financial institution. She, for years, brought executives up to the level of that technology and the demands of the job held for them. And she realized that there was a massive skills gap between executives that are in place today and what will be demanded of executives in the next 3 to 5 years, especially due to AI. And so she is working on the upskilling process and what does that look like and what are those skills? And we'll be talking with her. She has a piece that we'll be sharing with you all next week around upskilling. And then she will be joining us for a live webinar discussion on September 16th with another person in our community who I have turned to multiple times because I think I threatened to go back to school, literally to grad school, at least once a year. Her name is Vicki Johnson, and she is a co-founder of a company called ProFellow. And ProFellow connects people with new opportunities for not just upskilling, but graduate degrees, fellowships, other types of opportunities that you may not even know were available to you. And the other part of that is she helps you to think through what the options could look like, because I think many of us, when we think about going back to school, we think about, oh my God, dropping everything in my life for a year, 2 years, 3 years to get another degree. And that's just not feasible for all of us. There she is.
Okay, hold on. I gotta remove my other self, and I gotta turn this on mute. Okay,
All right.
still totally echoing, and I don't know why. Carry on, Tori.
Okay. I hope I don't echo. If I do, turn off the mic. It's still good to see you, E. Okay. I think I'm still echoing.
You are, and that must be. Oh, I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay. I'm so sad that we can't actually hear you now, but okay. We get to look at you. So, this is what we have in store. It's a great discussion. It's one that I've been wanting to have with the group for a long time because I like to talk about things that I think about a lot. And I've almost gone to grad school perhaps 3 different times and decided not to go for various reasons. And I think about it all the time. So, here's the thing though, does it make sense for all of us, right? And we know that it costs money to go to grad school and it's not always going to pay off. Elise and I were just talking about this, that there are analyses now that show that for even these professions where a secondary degree or a graduate degree of some sort is required, you may not make that money back. You may be in debt for way longer. And it isn't actually financially it doesn't make as much financial sense to go back to school. So these are questions that we want to explore, and Vicky will be the person to help think through those and what are those options and what are ways that we could even get money to go for fellowships through our employers, through a grant. There's many different ways to do it. And that's what she now has dedicated her career and her business to, is helping people figure that out. It's a great database. I highly recommend it. I thought I knew everything that was out there, and then I went on to Profellow and saw like, wow, there's so much more I could be looking into right now. So I highly recommend it. And
I feel like
then we
that's
have a deep
always the
dive.
case.
Oh, go ahead,
I
Elisa.
Yeah, I feel like that's always the case. I was having that conversation the other day with someone about raising capital, right? That there's
Yeah.
so many more avenues out there than we realize, and we kind of get hooked into, oh, there's one way to do this, and then there's actually a million grants and opportunities out there. And the same is true for learning, like, um, and I do think like I remember last year I listened to a podcast from the New York Times that really made a big impact on me because it said that it's true that college graduates still make more money, statistically make more money, than non-college graduates, although I think our recent crop of college graduates would really have a lot to say about that, because the unemployment rate and underemployment rate of new college graduates is pretty bad. But the point they were making is that it didn't used to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars ultimately to go to a good school. Now, can you choose to go? Like, I went to a state university. You can go to your in-state university. There are a variety of systems where you probably get a very good education and not spend so much. But there's a whole, when people still were crediting Ivy Leagues as being more important and more giving you more validity, those schools are costing you. I've just been shocked when my friends talk about what college is costing for their kids.
Yeah.
And what this podcast was saying is it's no longer clear that doing that over a lifetime that having the degree and making some more money will compensate for the way bigger amount of debt you go into, especially when that debt just seems to take forever to pay down. So it's like it's one of the considerations now that it used to be kind of a no-brainer, and I don't really think it is. And our newly hired research and program coordinator, Ryan, recent college graduate. So he did a bunch of research for me about this and about how nominally the unemployment rate for new college graduates is like 5 or 6%. But underemployment, are they working in what they studied? Are they working in a job that sort of relates to and compensates them for the work they did in college? That number is much, much higher. and particularly I think maybe living here in Silicon Valley, it's worse than in some other places. Um, so it used to be a no-brainer, and now we're making it, and we as a society are making it not a no-brainer anymore.
Well, and there's the money gap, and then there's also the skills gap. And there's
Yeah,
a few studies that I had cited in my piece, my most recent one for optionality, but I'll share just a few things that I learned in the process and in working with Gina and the Atheon team. They've shared with me there is a huge skills gap between college graduates and high school graduates and the current workplace. So, because of AI, there are certain skill sets that they're looking for, and these are not the skill sets that graduates are coming into the workforce with. So, they are, of course, not getting those jobs. And for that matter, neither are the professionals that are already in those jobs because they don't have the skills. So many of them are losing those jobs. And
yeah.
those who could upskill, it's really a matter of just getting them upskilled and not having to fire and rehire brand new people. So they're looking at this problem from the skills gap perspective. And the idea here is once you get the skills, you may not need another degree or more education. It's really about the skills. And if you can prove that you have those skills, that shouldn't stop you from getting those jobs. And I think that's a very different way of how I mean, think about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when you wanted to up your game, you wanted to be ready for the next level. You went and got a degree, an executive education program. Some of these may still be helpful, but I think the whole AI paradigm on the workforce has made us rethink what are some of those moves, those like must-haves in order to succeed.
Well, it's interesting too because you see a lot of colleges, they're kind of freaking out about, oh, the kids are using AI, but they are treating it like they're using AI to cheat, or they're using AI instead of applying their own critical thinking. I spent this last weekend at a conference with a lot of people across every kind of industry. AI was the 800-pound gorilla in the room that came into every conversation. And there were quite a number of academics, and a lot of them were saying, they've sort of realized that if the AI is going to happen, students are going to use AI. So in fact, their classroom tries to focus on how to use AI to enhance what you're doing, not replace you learning and not replace you doing work. And my our aforementioned coordinator Ryan, I said I'm happy for you to use AI to do this research, but here are the kinds of sources that I consider credible. So not just some random stuff you find on the internet, but like academic resources, media outlets I'm very familiar with and know they do good work, stuff like that. And also I'm like, so he can do things so quick, like blink of an eye. So just when he was researching all this stuff for me, I was like, okay, now I want you to go and I want you to think about what questions am I not asking? What other things how could we connect this to optionality's mission? Like it doesn't need to happen in 45 minutes. Like think about it. Like what else can you endeavor to learn about the connection between having an optionality driven life and ongoing lifelong learning? And like bring me something they're not telling you. I know you're asking all these great questions and everything, and they're giving you answers, and you're using reputable sources, and you're checking the citations. But like, what have I not thought to ask them? You have a different brain than me. You could think of different questions, and AI is not going to think of the questions for you. There's one interesting thing that came up this weekend, which is that in endeavoring to get AI to do a bunch of work for us more quickly, it's actually there is the capability there to improve how we ask humans to do things, right? Because the more clear your prompts can be, the more specific you make them, the more you shape and make it really clear what you're looking for, the better job AI will do. Well, you know what? The better job humans would do too if we stopped counting on everybody to kind of read our mind and gave them really super
Yes.
clear and effective instruction.
Your prompts need to show that you actually know what it is that you're looking for and can assess what it is. It's interesting you bring that up because are you familiar with vibe coding?
Oh, I just had an email this morning with someone asking me if there's this tool, I guess, Lovable, that a lot of people are
Yes,
using. She's like, have
yes.
you used this yet? I am familiar with the term. I haven't tried it myself yet. Have you?
So I'm exploring it because
Oh.
I'm doing a presentation for a group on how to up their game, their brand, and what is the value of a website. And of course, you told me when I was starting to build out a website for my advisory, and you said, "Do you really need a website? I mean, just have a page, right?" So I was trying to look into some of the options, the alternatives to websites, and uh, vibe coding is they're tools that enable you to basically through prompts build a site, an app without any coding. It does the coding for you. You just give it direction. And I thought, well, this is perfect because I absolutely am poor. I mean, I know very little code. I know enough to be dangerous and to never, I can't create what I want. So I know that coding is not an option for me. So I was exploring vibe coding and I asked ChatGPT for lists and the pros and the cons. And I said, just what are the pros and cons of using vibe coding? And I expected it to have just pro, 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 and the cons would be kind of lame. And actually, one of the cons was, I believe it was called skills degradation.
Hmm.
If you are a programmer, now for me, who never really had significant coding skills, it doesn't particularly matter. But if you are a coder and you're using vibe coding, you lose your edge. So it brought up a really interesting question for me of maybe there are certain activities that you should retain. Sure, I can write and I can do things on my own, but I've been leveraging AI tools to help me and not with the stuff, the creative writing, but with like the facts and the figures and some of the, hey, make this short and sweet for me because I talk too much. So that's helpful. But if I were to ask it to create or to do things that I have been building skills in, then I think you start to tread a
Hmm.
line and it's a little more dangerous, right? If you are not an expert in something and then maybe ChatGPT can help you fill in for that gap, but be careful that it doesn't start to replace
That's interesting. I think
your skill.
there's a really we could have a whole debate about this, because do you remember the transition from, um, when blogging first started, you really needed to know quite a bit of HTML code.
Yes.
And then these WYSIWYG platforms were introduced. What you see is what you get, where it's like, looks like a word processor and it codes for you. And you still might get into the guts to, like, I used to like to change image sizes, and I think you still had to kind of get into the guts and edit the HTML for that. Um, but the thing about the WYSIWYG interface is it democratized, right? That's what we used to talk about with BlogHer, right? Democratizing the idea of creating a website, democratizing the idea of having your own personal printing press. And and because you still got an output that you could look at and say, this either did or did not give me what I wanted. Then you could go in and mess with it some more. And yeah, if you wanted to do, and so much of the internet tech development over the last 20 years is about helping people do things like, you can have an e-commerce shopping cart and set up a store pretty easily. There's a whole, like, if you're looking, even if you're using Squarespace, a WordPress, they have so many extensions and additions that you can use to basically relieve you of having to learn really serious code or hire. Now, my spouse, the software programmer, would say that none of that is actually programming. HTML is not a programming language. He's saying this is not, this is, he supposes this is coding, but it's not, because it kind of is code, but it's not programming. It's not creating something out of nothing using a programming language like C++ plus plus, or whatever it is, that's the Python or whatever's the popular thing right now. So we had this conversation this weekend, in fact, because of all these conversations going around. So it's not going to degrade. Like, I think someone who's an actual programmer, their skills are not going to be degraded by vibe coding, because that's not the kind of coding they probably
do. I could be wrong, but he was very much like, that's not really programming. That's could be, you could call it coding, but it's not software engineering. And
I've
you
asked
know,
that question though for things other than coding. For example, I mean, I go to ChatGPT for press releases. Why should I have to write a press release? I've done these so many times. I'm like, forget about it. I'm not doing this one. Here are the facts. Just go write it up. And it occurred to me, well, if I am managing someone and I need to get a press release and they only turn to ChatGPT, how will they learn what is good? What makes for a really good one? What makes for a really powerful one? And maybe I'm not giving ChatGPT enough credit. Maybe they eventually it has learned how to write
did
the
we really
ultimate press release.
learn? Did you really learn what was a good press release from the writing of it or from seeing the response to it? Like, can you learn by observing the feedback loop? Like,
Uh,
I don't think it's impossible to learn that way. Um, and I think like I used it after you actually told me about using it yourself to write a proposal. Like, I used it for that because it's very much I need to get the facts across concisely, clearly, simply. It wasn't, as you say, creative writing. It was, here's what we're talking about doing, here's why I'm the one to do it, here's what here's what the scope of work looks like. It was great at that. I would have agonized over something like that when I didn't need to, you
right.
know however, when I I I dictated to a tool a newsletter I wanted to write, and then I told it to do a light edit because I'm sure I had ums and knows and likes or whatever. But in the light edit, it also took out all of my idiosyncratic speech. Anything that sounded like me was like smoothed over. So I had to go back to the original. They did a full transcript, and I had to go back and like copy paste over. I'm like, why does this seem so like generic? Well, because they took out everything about the way that only, well, not only, I'm sure other people talk like me, but like the things that are noticeably Elisa speak. They took those out. And that was with a light edit. I can only imagine if I had picked heavy edit. So but I agree with you. Like, why should you? And you only know it's a great press release now because you've done press releases and seen which ones get the bites and which ones people just ignore. It's a different, I'm not saying it wouldn't serve a junior person to write them themselves, but I think the learning comes from seeing the feedback loop.
Okay. Well, now I don't feel so bad.
Don't feel bad. Yeah. This did come up this last weekend too, because and this is very relevant to like Optionality's whole mission about companies learning that they can work a different way and it's okay and it can be mutually beneficial. Because right now we're hearing two stories. These big companies that want everyone to come back to the office. And one of the reasons they always give, and I think they give it because they think it'll make them sound like less of a corporate jerk. Oh, we need to be in the office because our younger, more junior employees need that mentorship. They need that, someone there to help them. How will they grow? Right. And kind of ignoring the fact that I bet you could figure that out in other ways besides in real life every day of the week. Right. But then these are the same companies that like, we're going to be getting rid of 40% of our junior positions because AI can do it. And I'm like, well, which is it, people?
I
You care
shouldn't be
so
laughing at
much.
that. Yeah.
I know it's not funny, but it's like so true. I look at them, I'm like, they don't even know they're doing it. I don't think they don't care they're doing it. But it's like, which is it? You care so much about the next generation or not, because you can't, those two things just sound really funny to me put together.
So, just sort of, backing up slightly, back
Mm,
to the back to school theme, right? I think AI, it always comes back around to AI,
yeah, yeah.
but I think there's also a whole questioning of what we used to do for educating ourselves, for up leveling. And the whole question around school is new. And part of what I wrote about in my essay this week was around an experience that I think did you remember that story that I told?
I was dying to ask you who that was because I didn't remember who it
Okay,
was.
well, I'm not going to tell you live here. But I will
You know
tell
me
you,
when we go off screen.
um, yes, but it was interesting to me because I was, still very new in my entrepreneurial journey, and I was being mentored by a woman I was introduced to through a mutual friend who figured, hey, I have a friend who started a media company and has been in, and I didn't know she was going to sell the company. But we met every few months, and when she told me she was leaving and she was going to be transitioning out of the company, asked if she could work for our company, Blog Her, for free. Just hang out, just hang around. And I was like, well, really? You want to do that? Like, why would you, and I was so confused by it, and I was embarrassed that I didn't really take her up on it. I didn't really circle back. I just kind of let it go away. And it occurred to me much later that what she was doing is what I think so many of us are now seeking, which is experience in the future, experience in future
Mm,
models. We were the future of media at
right.
that time. And she had run a company in under the old regime, like how media used to be, and she wanted exposure. And isn't that that's what I had been seeking after our exit? And I wanted to try new companies. Let me go play around with blockchain. Let's go play with AI. And that
Yeah.
was the
So
ultimate.
I was going to ask you, like, what was your mechanism for learning about when you were in augmented reality and blockchain and all those kind of Web 3.0, I don't even think people use that term anymore, but Web 3.0 technologies? When I first got into tech, I learned from people more than reading. Like I
Yeah.
learned from whiteboarding, and it was in person because that's how we worked back in the day. But asking someone to explain to me how digital technology worked, asking someone to explain to me how other, physical layer technology worked or whatever it was that I was working in. I learned on the job. I completely, even before that, when I was in commodities, he just trained me on the job. I learned everything on the job from people. I never thought of going back to school. How did you learn in all those Web 3.0 technologies that you
Yeah.
worked for? You were being paid. You worked for company. You weren't offering to
Yes.
do it for free. So how did you
I
learn?
here's my technique. I offer something that I know I can do in exchange for exposure to something new. So in the case of, let's start with augmented reality, a founder who was building, if you can believe, an ad tech platform in augmented reality had reached out to me to be an advisor because I knew something about ad tech, and I knew the this was right after exiting Blogger. Like I lived in this space for years, and I did it because I wanted to have the exposure to the augmented reality. And in the process, I learned that, by the way, you can't really build something in a space that there's no one playing in. And so he funded the company through crypto, and that's how I got into crypto. And then he showed me the ways of how blockchain could to monetize and tokenize. And I was fascinated. I thought, oh my God, this is the new currency. How do I then lend what I did for BlockHer and building a community to be the head of community at a blockchain company? And yes, there was a lot of new stuff to learn, but there was also stuff that they didn't know, like how to scale a community, how to operationalize scale for a community, the marketing tactics. There was so much that I could offer them in exchange for that exposure.
Do you think if you hadn't been fascinated by it, you could have gone about it that way? Of like, how much is I don't find myself fascinated by blockchain and crypto. So I just imagine, even if I thought I should learn it, like, would it work for me? Did being fascinated, was that a what's the word, a prerequisite, for, to use an
Yes, for
academic term?
me, it has to be. I mean, I can't, and I stopped being interested once it kind of became all about the crypto. If I don't know if anyone who's in Web3, I think it is kind of coming back around to the technology, not just to the markets, but yes, to answer your
Mhm.
question, I couldn't have done
Yeah.
it if there wasn't a thread there that was interesting to me.
the thing that I hope we'll learn from people like Vicky and Gina, and the thing that I think is interesting is that I always, I was not a great student in school. I was up until a certain point, and then I lost my fascination with learning that way. Maybe it coincided with when I got super into theater. I don't know. Maybe that's all I really cared about. So my older brother and my younger sister, who they're both like geniuses, 4.0 valedictorian in high school type of people. And I was not. I was like the middle child, the problem middle child.
Still
Um,
can't picture this, but okay, I'll
I
take your word
know,
for it.
and I did okay. Like I didn't let myself actually like flunk out of anything, but I got something my neither my brother nor sister ever got, which was C's. I got some C's. I mostly got A's and B's, but I got some C's. And that didn't change in college, even when I was studying for a theater major and a music minor. I still wasn't was not a great student. I did not love it. I did not love like traditional school was just not my jam about. And then I went into these industries where I knew nothing and I soaked up and became an expert, would talk to media about routing protocols and technology, would go to conferences and talk about commodity trading
Right.
platforms. I mean, like I learned that I could learn. I learned on the job. And then of course the internet, and I that was new to me too when I first got on the internet, right? And so I always like to say to parents I know whose kids are not applying themselves, who could be doing so
Yes.
much better, I'm always like, there's hope. Like, there's hope. It might just be that traditional school is not their best milieu for learning. And I think
And
and I
TikTok
never,
is.
what?
And TikTok is.
Yes, apparently no. But and I never have once had a thought of going back to school. Never once have I thought, oh, I'll go back and get an MBA or I'll go back and get this I got out once with my BA when I was 21, and that is like boom, that is all the formal school I want to do. It has never been unlike you who has thought about it a lot. I have always been like, I'd never want to go back there.
I
So
love school.
I I just didn't,
Did.
I like the people, I like the discussion. I always like talking in class. I know that's a surprise, but I mean, I always like the discussion in class, but so I think it's going to be great to hear about like that there are lots of things you can do that are not about I'm not knocking college. I think it was important to do. I'm glad I did it, but there are lots of ways to learn, and I'm glad we're going to be talking about it all month.
Amen. So join us
Yes,
September
our
16th.
webinar is September 16th that Jory was talking about. So, and I guess we should also we're just going to tease to October's theme, which is financial literacy and investment. And we're doing our next in real life event on October 1st in San Francisco. And it's going to be all about, what are the gaps, how to fill your financial gaps as you're looking ahead to protect and preserve your future, and have a conversation about how your money story and mindset affects your ability to do so. So we've got a couple of events coming up that we hope you'll join us for, including joining us at optionality.life. And this month we're talking about lifelong learning, going back to school. It seemed appropriate for September. So we'll see you around.